The Dukes of Dice are brought to you by Tasty Minstrel Games. Check out all their awesome titles at playtmg.com.
Welcome to the Duchy. It's time for another episode of the Dukes of Dice podcast, a proud member of the Dice Tower Network.
Coming to you from the Duchy in the Duke City, Albuquerque, New Mexico, it's The Dukes of Dice, a podcast about board, card, and occasionally role-playing games. Today, the Dukes review Alexander Pfister's Great Western Trail. Then they give their top 10 games of the year. And now, the Dukes of Dice.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. This is Sean.
And Alex.
This is episode 124. Alex, Happy New Steer.
Happy New Steer to you, too.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that name courtesy of guild member John Giblin. Happy New Steer. We're talking about Great Western Trail, a theme about cattle wrangling, right? That's the right
wrestling.
word?
No.
Wrangling.
Wrangling. You
Yeah.
don't want to wrestle a cattle.
And it's our year-end show, sort of. It's kind of an odd thing. It comes out January 2nd.
Yes.
So it's technically our first show of the new year.
By the way, it comes out the day of the Rose Bowl.
Oh,
Go Trojans. Any Penn State fans out there, hopefully we're beating you by the time you're listening to this.
okay.
But we might not have.
Sure thing.
I hope we did. Anyway.
So again, thanks to John Giblin for naming that episode, and we're going to have all of our other naming runners up listed at the end of the show, which you can tune in for at the end.
If you listen to the entire
just
show.
continue listening. Don't do anything in between, and they will...
If you hit the 30-second skip button really, really fast, you'll get to it sooner.
Yeah. Point is that you can help name future episodes over on our Board Game Geek Guild, guild number 2008, where we have a bunch of awesome guild members that chime in on our Dukes on Deck every week to talk about the game that we're reviewing or the discussion topic or help name the episode. So
yeah,
check that out.
There was an interesting thread this week about games that we haven't played, or
Yeah.
at least that people weren't aware that we had played.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Lots of stuff going over there on our guild. So you should definitely go check that out. Go become a member, subscribe if you haven't done so already. We'd love that.
Yes.
Almost to 600. We're
Yes.
just shy.
very close.
Very close.
At the time of
It's
this.
like 598 or something.
I think it's 597. Sean.
Okay, great.
Yep,
Anyway,
that's what it is.
So anyway, Alex, sounds like there's still a little confusion over your departure.
Yes, just a bit. So if you look at the thread for this week, there were a lot of names themed off of this either being my last episode before I
Right.
leave on the trip, or this being the first episode without me because I was already on the trip.
Yeah.
Newsflash, I'm still here. Just for a little bit, though.
We'll provide some brief context.
Brief context, if you listened a few weeks ago, how long ago was it that we announced this? A few weeks ago.
Emphasis on brief, Alex.
Oh, sorry. Brief explanation. So basically, December 21st, I quit my job in TV news, and I am taking a trip around the world,
Yep.
quite literally around the world, starting January 11th. So we have this episode, and we have next week's episode, and then Sean will have a rotating group of fantastic co-hosts.
Yeah, Suzanne will be the very first, which makes perfect sense. She's a full-fledged
From
Duke.
the beginning.
Yes. So she will be our first guest host while you're gone, and then I'll release more about schedules as some of them are confirmed.
It's a good lineup.
Oh yeah, I'm very excited. I mean, I'm not excited for you not to be here. I'm excited to finally have a good host.
Oh, okay.
No.
All right. I see how it is.
Just kidding.
Yeah.
Just kidding. Hey, so we also have a Patreon account. If you go to patreon.com/Dukes of Dice, you can help support the show. And boy, have our Patreon supporters really helped support, because we are kind of ramping up video production this year. That's going to be something that we're going to be doing a lot more of. It's going to be video reviews, although I'm kind of thinking of calling them more first thoughts or first impressions.
Okay.
Yeah, because might only be off a couple plays.
Yeah, makes
And
sense.
I don't want to take a full review. I don't want to cannibalize stuff from the show necessarily.
Sure.
So we'll be doing that and some other stuff. We have a brand new Dutchy studio. In fact, later in the episode, when you hear our top 10 of 2016, we have already recorded that. We've already filmed that, and you're just hearing the audio from that. So if you want to go check out the video of that, it'll be up about a day or two after this episode drops.
Yes.
So if you want to listen to it twice, but this time with my lovely face and Alex's hand motions, then then you can do that.
Apparently I banged the table a lot.
Yeah. So a lot of stuff that Patreon helped with, video equipment, sound equipment, all of the material for the set, the table, the desk, shelves, chairs, you name it. So Big help from Patreon. Really appreciate that. All of our awesome, amazing Patreon supporters. And again, if that's something that you would consider doing, at least go check that out over at patreon.com/Dukes of Dice.
Yeah, and separately, we actually have I just recorded a couple of Patreon episodes, and I'm expecting to record more.
Special interview episodes.
Yeah, correct. That also backed by our Patreon folk that are going to come out over the next few weeks while I'm gone, kind of to fill in the gap, so you don't get too much of an Alex withdrawal.
Yeah, there you go.
I know how it can be. So I just did one with Mike Fitzgerald and one with Jamie Stegmeyer pretty recently. And there are other yet-to-be-named guests who I'm trying to line up and scramble to line up in the last few days before I bounce out of town.
Yeah.
So expect to hear those soonish.
Cool. Yeah. Mike Fitzgerald will be dropping probably a couple days after this episode drops, and then he'll actually be back on the show as a co-host for the January 30th episode, I believe.
There we go. So if you don't like Mike Fitzgerald, then you're going to be very disappointed with the feed.
And shame on you.
Yeah, shame on you. He's a cool dude.
Yeah, he's a very nice man.
Yes. All right. We've talked enough about not gaming. How about some talk about gaming?
So this was kind of another rough week for gaming. We recorded last Thursday before the Christmas holiday, so in theory, that should have been a great time for me to game. Instead, it was me down here in the basement, sawing away and assembling the studio, building the desk, putting together all the shelves. There was no gaming over the weekend. None whatsoever. There was no gaming during the week because the work continued. Other than Wednesday, of course, our Dukes of Dice game night, and then Friday night was our Dukes of Dice date night.
Yes, our date night, Sean.
Yes. So we were able
on that one
to get a bunch of games of Great Western Trail, which, of course, we'll talk about later. We did play Wednesday night after Great Western Trail, Conan.
Yes.
Is it Conan the Barbarian or just Conan? I think it's just Conan.
I don't know.
Conan the Barbarian is the movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Conan the Barbarian.
Yes. So Conan is a miniatures one-verse-many game that recently came out from Monolith Games, a Kickstarter fulfillment. If I remember correctly, Fantasy Flight is helping with distribution on the retail end. That seems to be a thing I remember, but don't quote me on that. And this was our buddy Jared's copy. So Jared is insane. He manages to get all of his minis painted for whatever game, a lot of different board game minis. He managed to get them painted and painted well to a very, very high quality within a relatively short period of time. I mean, he spends a lot of time on it, but he's able to crank them out. And so this was a beautifully painted set. And this one verse many game, I really enjoyed quite a bit. I was the Overlord. And if you don't know, this is, of course, based off the Conan IP, which I'm not a big fan of.
Never seen anything in it.
I've seen the two movies, Conan the Barbarian, Conan the Destroyer.
Barbarian.
Thank you. And in fact, I watched The Destroyer a lot as a kid. Was that the one? We never saw him. Anyway. But this is not based off the Schwarzenegger movies. This is just based off the original stories of Robert E. Howard. Does that sound right?
I don't know.
I'm pulling that from some part of my brain.
So I know much more about Conan O'Brien than I do about Conan the Barbarian. Barbarian. I can't keep saying it wrong.
It was correct. It was Robert E. Howard. It was just floating there in the back of my brain.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Good job.
Yeah, I'm very happy with myself. But no, this one versus many game was pretty interesting. I like how the point allocation system works. You have these, the players have these crystals, right? And you assign them to do various things, whether it's move, whether it's attack. You can use them on defense to boost your defense or to reroll defense dice. And so it's interesting how you can kind of do this on your turn, in response to the Overlord's turn. And then, Alex, you could perform an action, have someone else then perform an action, and then come back to you. So there's no strict turn order.
Yeah, when it's the player's turn, broadly all of the players' turn, you basically can kind of intersperse actions as you need to.
Right, which you guys didn't really take advantage of that.
We didn't take advantage of a lot of things.
No, you guys were a horrible team.
We took advantage of me busting through walls.
Yes.
And doing crazy spin attacks that murdered like 5 wolves.
Sure.
But yeah, other than that, not very effective teamwork.
Yeah, so you went charging in after the big bad. So this particular scenario, the princess had been captured and you're trying to find her. There's all of these huts that are occupied by some hyenas and some pigs. And there's also a giant snake, and then there's the big bad, like Zargul or something, I forget his name. And so you're like, yeah, I'm going to take out the bad guy. I'm going to take out the villain. And so you go in, you bust down the wall, which is one of Conan's abilities, and he does some wounds and then kind of just spends the next 3 or 4 turns, and it's a timed game, 8 rounds, kind of trying to kill him and not doing much else.
So the way the system works is you either have like attacking mode where you recharge a little bit as far as your crystals, but you can do more in terms of possibly attacking or doing special actions, or you have kind of defense, quiet mode, night mode, whatever you want to call it, where you can recharge more of these action point crystals.
Right.
And yeah, unfortunately, I used so many trying to hack him to bits. Yeah, he just kind of chilled.
Did not go well.
And then eventually, after poor Dan, our friend Dan, who was playing as kind of the magic user, wizardy kind of thing, was teleporting like from hut to hut, like checking princess here, no, princess here, no, princess here, no. As he kept checking those, you kept focusing all of your attacks on the squishy wizard.
Yep.
Because Conan, who should normally be the tank, is busy just like with one dude trying to chop his head off.
Yeah.
Which I eventually did.
Oh, yeah.
But not until like both of my other teammates were pretty low on health.
Yeah, I wound up killing all of you.
Yes.
And that's the other cool thing is...
I died last, though, so really I finished in second place.
Those action point crystals are also your wounds. So as you start taking wounds, you start losing those crystals, which means you start losing the ability to actually do a bunch of things. And there's a cool, almost like Terra Mystica, the bowls, the power in the bowls, where you kind of move them around. You're moving them around from the active, I'm able to spend these, to spent, and then you're able to recharge some of them every round, like you mentioned. I really enjoyed this system. There's a fluid nature to it, don't you think?
Yeah, I think so. I think the system, for the most part, is actually pretty decent.
And I really like the ability, which again, you guys didn't use, where you can interrupt each other's turns, so to speak. And so Conan can like bust open a wall, bust it down, and then the wizard can walk in like line of sight of the busted open hut, and then like chain lightning everyone inside, and then Conan can run in and clean up. And I like it. It feels very cinematic that way. Now, there are some issues. Actually, I was just listening to after we finished playing, I finished listening to the Boards Alive review. They did a full review of this game. And there's some interesting art choices here, which is fairly reminiscent of the source material that it comes from, where it's a bunch of naked chicks.
Yeah.
Essentially.
No, on the cover pretty much of the player's rulebook.
Yeah.
Basically is that.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's a little, I mean, I'm not a prude by any means, but if I'm going to play with this with Mariah, or eventually we're going to play with this with like Chewy, that would just be kind of weird. You got to be a little bit careful if you're out playing this at Empire, out in public. So that's a little off-putting. But everything else, I mean, the miniatures, especially fully painted, and the gameplay was really good, really solid gameplay. I really enjoyed Conan. I'd be interested to see this system on, another theme that I'm more interested in. To me, Conan is generic fantasy. And I know there's a lot more to it to fans of it, but yeah, So,
and for me, the system, for the most part, worked really well. I like this idea of being able to interrupt other people's actions. I like this sort of sliding thing you're able to do that if you're going to force someone into combat, you better pay up for it, Sean.
Yeah.
If you're going to force something to activate twice in a row, you might get a really good benefit out of that. But you're also going to have to spend a lot of your resources to do something like that. I think that was well done and fairly interesting. There are some little hitches in the system that felt kind of awkward. To me, the picking stuff up action felt kind of awkward. Sean's shaking his head.
Yeah.
It's hinky to me. It's weird. It doesn't feel as smooth as the rest of the system does. That piece of it.
I don't think it makes it not smooth. It just makes it annoying to you that you have to spend a point.
Yeah, I'm annoyed by that. And the proposed solution we talked about at the table was if you could use a movement point, one of the free movement points to that, I think that's probably a better, fairer use of resources there.
Okay.
Especially when, like, big giant barbarian, I'm too tired to pick up just puny head. I can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have the crystals. Oh.
Okay.
It just seemed weird. Anyway, that's my thoughts. I did like it somewhat. It's not something that's typically my cup of tea necessarily.
Well,
I know.
I don't get that because I
don't like being on a team, Sean.
No, well, because you like Descent.
Yeah.
And I think you liked Imperial Assault. You just felt it was imbalanced.
The campaign
mode.
And I liked Skirmish better.
Right, but you still like the system of Imperial Assault, do you not?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, so it's weird for you to say that this isn't normally my kind of thing.
Well, it is. I mean, if you're looking at the type of games that I'll pull out and play on, say, a Wednesday night or a Friday or anything, I mean, I'm not going to Star Wars Imperial Assault first. I'm not going to Descent first. I'm not going to Arcadia Quest first. I actually liked Arcadia Quest.
Arcadia Quest isn't one versus many, but go on.
I know, it's a different kind of thing, but I'm talking about this kind of a system where it's dice heavy, it's Ameritrashy, it's...
Yeah.
So, and the one versus many thing, yeah, we went through a whole thing of Descent. I certainly liked it well enough to get through the entire campaign that we got through. I like full co-op better than I like one versus many generally. In terms of the types of games I tend to gravitate towards.
And I like one versus many as long as I'm the one.
As long as you're the one, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. In fact,
excellent.
In fact, when we were going to do another campaign of Descent, when you weren't going to be the Overlord, the group mysteriously fell apart.
Ah, yes, the new Overlord vanished.
Yes. Well, I wonder what happened there. Interesting. All right. Talking about games, we spent a good chunk of time on that. All right.
Yep, sure did.
Christmas gaming. So I played some games with my family over the holidays. I was up in Santa Fe. I was not assembling a set or doing any real work, which for long-time listeners, probably not surprising. Probably not surprising at all. So games that ended up making it to the table, Glucks. And again, easy to teach. This is one I thought my dad, who's pretty picky about games, doesn't like screw your neighbor, confrontational kinds of things. Tends to like either co-op or games where you're kind of multiplayer solitaire, where you're building your own thing in your own corner. Although, for whatever reason, he really likes Monopoly. Yeah, I think that's... Anyway. Ticket to Ride, we got to the table as we always do. Afterwards, though, what was interesting is my parents bought their second board game ever.
Oh.
So they bought Splendor way back when.
Sure.
As far as I know, never played it, though we've played on their copy. They bought Ticket to Ride Europe.
Oh, cool.
And they were looking at other maps as well.
Nice.
So I don't know if those two will play it, but it's kind of cool that they're ending up picking up board games.
Yeah, I like the Europe map.
I've not played it yet.
Oh, it's cool. You got channels that you can, or underground rails that you could do.
Yeah, I've done Nordic countries is the only other Ticket to Ride map I've done. So, but it is amazing. I've probably played that one up there in some of my most played games of the year, Ticket to Ride.
Yeah.
Because it just tends to be the one that my family gravitates towards. That's the one that everyone can agree to get to the table. So
cool.
Anyway, that was some holiday gaming for me.
All right. Well, I got a game in the mail from March 4th Games, and the game is simply called Four, F-O-U-R, like the number 4. This was designed by John Christensen, and in this game, you have exactly 4 players, and you're playing on teams of 2, and you want to sit opposite your partner. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to collect a hand of 4 of a kind. So there are a bunch of different cards. There are pandas, ninjas, T-Rexes, princesses, sharks, pirates, robots, and wizards, and some other stuff too. And you're trying to collect 4 pandas or 4 sharks or whatever. And there are some face-up cards in the middle, and it's kind of a real-time thing where you're able to do things. There's no turns, but you have to let someone completely resolve an action before you can do something. So there are some face-up cards, and you're able to take one of the face-up cards, add it to your hand, and then replace it with one from your hand. There are certain actions you can take that will let you trash a certain card, maybe draw a new card, or steal a card from someone. Everyone's ultimately replacing. Everyone's always going to have 4 cards. Now, once I have 4 of a kind, what I need to do is I need to signal my opponent, hey, I have 4 of a kind. So before you even play, you and your opponent come up with a secret signal.
Your opponent or your teammate?
Or sorry, teammate. Teammate. Thank you. So to me, my signal is to scratch my chin. So I start scratching. You can't see that I'm doing it right now, but you start scratching your chin, trying to get your opponent to see it. But here's the trick. If one of I keep saying opponent, your teammate, you want your teammate to see this. Teammate. However, if your opponent, and I'm using opponent correctly, notices that you're doing something and they think that you're doing the signal, they think you have 4 of a kind, they can call you out on it. And if you have to show it, and if you have it, you're going to get the point. You're both playing to 4 points, the first to 4 points. There are some ways that I think it's the panda that gives you an extra point. If your opponent calls you out on it, they get the point. So it's kind of interesting because there's the real-time aspect where you're trying to do things quickly and get the hands set up, but you have to watch your teammate. You have to watch your opponent to see what they're doing. And it was interesting. It was, I don't know that I played with the right group for it. This is something that I think Mariah would have a lot of fun with. It's more of a party game, a 4-player party game. And it was interesting. The art was really good. It kind of had a smash-up feel to it, both in terms of art style, the type of cards that you had. Pretty simple in terms of the actions. You're just kind of, ultimately, you're cycling through a bunch of cards to try and get to 4 of a kind. And I like the signaling aspect because it needs to be subtle enough. But I spent the first game, my teammate didn't realize that I was trying to signal him and forgot to look for the signal. And what was it? Oh, I was just biting my lip. And eventually I was, instead of just subtly biting my lip, I was just full on just chomping on my lip, to try and get his attention, and didn't notice at all. So, interesting game. I don't know its availability right now. I started looking for it online. I don't know that it's available yet. I didn't see it on Cool Stuff. So that's 4 from March 4th Games.
I finally got in a play of Broom Service, the card game. Yes, the card game version of Broom Service. That's what the name would imply.
Yep.
That seemed to be a trend this year, Sean. A lot of these card implementations of full-on board games. We saw Power Grid, the card game. We saw Castles of Burgundy, the card game, and Broom Service. Broom Service, the card game, obviously takes away the map and basically turns it into a set collection game. And it uses that Cowardly Brave piece of things actually pretty well. There's some interesting decisions as far as that goes. You have a not identical deck. You have a dealt out deck of cards that has a wide array of certain distributions of cards. You're trying to complete potions. You're trying to build up your sets to score a bunch of points that way. And it distills the Cowardly Brave element of Broom Service really well, I think. It misses on some of the other things. For instance, I think building your hand is less of an interesting decision in this game than it is in Broom Service itself. And it's certainly a lighter implementation of Broom Service. This is not a direct translation. I think, for instance, Castles of Burgundy, pretty direct translation.
Yeah.
Power Grid, other than the map, pretty close as far as a translation. This, I think, loses some things in it, but the Cowardly Brave core of it is still there. If you liked that component of Broom Service, I think you're going to enjoy the card game. And this may be one that I'm going to pick up. I definitely had fun with it. Not the same level of fun, I think, with Broom Service itself, but this is one where they're definitely scratching very different itches. There isn't that same kind of overlap as with Castles of Burgundy, the board game and card game. So I think because of that, there's definitely a place in the collection for both. All right, that's going to do it for what we played. Let's head on over for a quick look at the news. All right, because of our giant top 10 list, which takes a ton of time in an episode, we're going to do an abbreviated news segment and basically just one thing. It's a Kickstarter item, and Sean looks super stoked about it.
Yep, go on.
It's Spinagogue. That's what it's called, Spinagogue. It is tied to Hanukkah, which, if you're listening to this, I think wrapped up yesterday. The day, I think it wraps up January 1st. You'd think I'd know this kind of thing, but I'm only Jew-ish.
Yeah.
Anyway. So the catchline for this is no Geld, no glory. When it comes to the holidays, Christmas may have the best movies, songs, and fanciful characters, but holy shin, which is, from looking up in Yiddish, is Yiddish for a bunch of things.
It's a letter, isn't it? Isn't shin a letter?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
But it's also,
It's a Hebrew letter.
It may also be words. Hanukkah has the best game. These 8 crazy nights are now crazier than ever with Spinagogue, the official dreidel stadium for spinning, winning Geld and glory. As you know, every game needs an arena, a place where all the action happens. Football is played on a field, tennis is played on a court, and baseball is played on a diamond. Now dreidel is played on a Spinagogue. It's the gift that keeps on spinning at home, school, or parties. Hanukkah is not the same without this dreidel game. So what it is it is an arena, it's a Star of David arena.
Yep.
It's got, and in the middle is an arena that you can kind of change the size of depending on whether you put an insert in there or not.
Okay. And
then you can put a base layer, so you can create baseball dreidel, or you can create different arenas to kind of fight on. I had to put this on there, Sean.
Okay.
I just had to. Sean, taking a look at this, what do you think?
It looks interesting. It looks kind of fun and funny. It kind of looks like battling tops. It's battling tops sort of with dreidels instead.
Yeah. Are you going to back this?
Probably not. Probably not.
All right.
But I'll sing the dreidel song. Dreidel, 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 I made you out of clay.
And when it's dry and ready,
I don't remember the rest.
And when it's dry and ready with dreidel, I will play. That's about all I got. Yeah. All right. So if you're curious to back the Spinagogue,
the name is clever, by the way. That's a very clever name. Spinagogue.
$39 for the Spinagogue itself.
That's not bad.
However, there are lower pledge levels. $25 gets you a Spinagogue t-shirt, and $8 if you want to back at that level gets you what appears to be a heavy metal Hanukkah album. Yeah, so check that out. I don't know, I it made me chuckle. The video for this made me chuckle. The whole thing made me chuckle. Campaign does end January 24th of 2017. Looking at the page now, it's got about, on a good side of close to 14,000.
Okay.
Close to 14,000, 13,700. Of its $18,000 goal, that probably should make it with 24 days to go.
Very good.
That's Kick Tracker Alex says that's probably going to get funded. Just a guess. So, all right, that is Spinagogue, and that is our very quick look at the news.
Alex,
Yes, Sean?
do you know it's my favorite time of year?
What's that, Sean? Is it Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, Christmas?
No, it's Feldmas.
Oh, a Merry Feldmas to you.
And to you, Alex. You know, our fine sponsors over at Tasty Minstrel Games have a brand new game just in time for Feldmas from one of our favorite designers, Stefan Feld, Oracle of Delphi. And I got to play this at BGG-Con, and it was awesome.
And this is a pick up and deliver one, right?
It is, and I was surprised to like it as much as I did. That's a great way to spend your Feldmas. But hey, we don't want to leave everyone out. We want to be inclusive here. Tasty Minstrel also has a reprint of Gates of Loyang from Uwe Rosenberg. So if you want to celebrate Rosenbergica, you can do that with Gates of Loyang.
I guess that's a thing now.
That is a thing. So to everyone, Merry Feldmas and Happy Rosenbergica.
And check out all of TMG's titles at playtmg.com. All right, this week we are saddling up and riding down the old dusty trail from Kansas City to Albuquerque and beyond. It's Great Western Trail.
All right, Great Western Trail from Stronghold Games, designed by game designer extraordinaire Alexander Pfister, who is on fire, spelled with a PH.
PH?
Yeah.
Oh,
fire.
It would be PF? Fire?
Oh, wait, shoot. Yeah, that too. Dang it. I ruined it.
Because fire's not typically spelled higher, generally.
No, PH would still be fire.
I know it wouldn't be pronounced that
Okay,
way.
let's move on. Let's move on.
I don't think that's what you were trying to do.
Let's talk about briefly how to play Great Western Trail, because
Good luck with that.
Because this is a pretty complex game that is a pretty brutal teach, I think. So we're going to kind of do not the high detailed explanation, but just kind of an understanding. So at its heart, this is kind of a hand management game where you are trying to traverse a path on the board. There's these branching paths that all eventually meet in Kansas City. Once you reach Kansas City, you need a hand of cards that are diversified cattle. So there are grays, blacks, greens, whites. I think that's it. And so when you get to Kansas City, for every different colored card you have, you get its value in income. So managing your hand throughout the course of moving about the board is really important, because if you wind up in Kansas City with 4 Jersey cows, which are value 1, you're only getting the value of one of them. But if you have a gray and a white and a black and a green, now you're getting $7, which is obviously much better. So you want to diversify that hand, and you get paid that money for the value. You're then able to ship these cows a distance equal to their value, and there's this whole track on the side of the board. Doing that's going to allow you to get certain benefits, either points or possibly some bonus scoring cards. Now, the turn itself is you moving your meeple a couple of spaces along the track, and the track's going to change throughout the board as players build buildings. So there are some empty spots for buildings, and those don't count towards your movement initially, but as they get filled up, those are going to count against your movement. And you're able to move up to your maximum allowable space. But what's cool is that movement can increase, because everyone also has a player board. And on this player board, there are a bunch of discs that cover different abilities. And as you place discs out for shipping cattle, and eventually in the train stations, you're able to uncover these different abilities from your board, which is going to let you do different things, including increasing your hand size and increasing your movement, and taking these kind of bonus actions that you're able to do at certain times. So as you move, you're going to wind up on a building. Everyone starts on the board. There's a bunch of neutral buildings, and then you'll build your own. And these buildings let you do things that manipulate your hand. Maybe you discard a certain card from your hand to get some money. Maybe you are able to build a builder. You might be able to hire workers. There are 3 types of workers. There's the engineers, which increase how much train movement you're going to get, which is going to determine how much you're spending to ship farther and farther. There are the cowboys, which are going to make it easier for you to get new cattle cards to your hand. And then there are the craftsmen, who are going to let you build better and better buildings that you can add to the board. So those are some of the basic actions that you can take. You're hiring these cattle, which is a very interesting system. The more cowboys you have, the cheaper it is to get certain cattle. Also, it gives you access to more expensive cattle, or the payoff better, rather. And you're going to continue doing these circuits every time winding up in Kansas City, which changes the board then, because you add some tokens to the board, you add people to the hiring track. There are these hazards and TPs that get added to the board. You have to prepare for these endgame bonus cards. There is so much going on. We might flesh it out a little bit more in the review itself, but I think that's probably enough for now to have a basic understanding of the game. By no means comprehensive. Before we really dive into the review, we should probably Just mentioned this was a review copy from Stronghold Games. Just want to throw that out there for full disclosure. Just be aware of that.
Yep.
But so what do you think of Great Western Trail, Alex?
I like it a lot, is sort of the initial general impressions. It's one of those... Alexander Pfister is a genius with his mechanics, I think.
Oh, yeah.
He has diverse mechanics, and it uses this cool, almost merry-go-round kind of thing. That's sort of how I described it before, but basically you're taking laps. And the board evolves as you go. At its core, it is an engine builder. You are building an engine in different ways, whether it's literally a train engine, or you're building an engine to build buildings, or to grab cattle into your deck, or to thin your deck. But there's a lot of different ways to go about this. And it just works. It all kind of comes together and works. The teach is brutal. The setup and breakdown of this is brutal.
Yes.
So it is not a perfect experience by any means.
Yeah.
But when you get players who know what they're doing, it flows really well.
Absolutely.
And it's a really engaging, enjoyable experience. Even in losing, this is one of those where it can feel fun to lose if you do something interesting during the course of the game.
Right.
So yeah, I really enjoyed this one. And as I mentioned every time we talk about this, it's always good that it has Albuquerque and Santa Fe.
Yeah,
Makes me smile.
absolutely does. So yeah, I also enjoyed this quite a bit. I love engine building. That's a type of game that I will tend to enjoy. And I'll discuss this more when we talk about gameplay. But one of my complaints about a lot of engine builders is you get a feel that once you finally have completed your engine, or a good part of it, the game ends too quickly. And in this game, you still have a couple turns to keep turning the crank on your engine. And I really like that about this. And I'll explain that more as we get into the review. But yeah, this game does a lot of things right. I'm a huge fan of Alexander Pfister. This is closer in terms of weight and complexity to, say, a Mombasa than it is to Isle of Skye or Broom Service. I would say that he is a very talented designer, and that he can design, for different weight, different complexities, things like that. So this game is excellent. It is really excellent. Let's talk briefly about the rulebook. This is a very good rulebook. This is a Stronghold game. Look at Terraforming Mars, another Stronghold game. This rulebook is so much better than Terraforming Mars. I love it when a rulebook breaks down different sections and different colors, so you know, okay, this is talking about this phase of the turn. It gives good examples. It is very well, visually, it's very easy to learn the game from the rulebook. I learned it pretty quickly. I read through the rulebook in about 20 minutes or so, and was able to teach it to Raquel pretty quickly. It's so on going back and finding certain things, but overall, it's laid out really well. It's a really solid rulebook. And you compare it to, say, the Terraforming Mars rulebook, which Terraforming Mars is a lot less complex in terms of just the underlying rules. But the rulebook wasn't put together as well as this one was. That one was a big wall of text. Here, there's lots of stuff broken out into different sections. No complaints about the rulebook whatsoever. It's a solid, very solid rulebook. What do you think about the arts and component? The arts? The art? What are your thoughts on the arts, Alex? The art and components of Great Western Trail.
Well, and it's interesting to bring up Terraforming Mars, because I think there could easily be a legit fear, having seen Terraforming Mars and some of the component issues there. They don't exist in this game.
No.
What I will tell you is a lot of this stuff works. Visually, I think the board looks great.
Oh, yeah.
I think it looks really good. It's not the kind of art that I'm going to remember forever. It's not the kind that sticks out in my mind, but it works really well for this game. And everything looks fine. The cows look great. The graphic design to me was reasonably clear on all of this stuff.
I agree.
Once you know the language of the game, it's easy to understand what's going on. So I think on that front, it all worked together pretty well. Now, the question is, does this come in gameplay, or does this come in components? The fiddliness of setup here, Sean, and the play. Fiddliness of setup and play. I mean, you put that here or no?
You could put wherever you want, Alex.
Okay. I will tell you, the player boards are done really well. For instance, I like that this flippable 3-4 2-player system where you can kind of easily scale your board as you need to.
Well, explain that.
So yes, so in a 2-player game, you'll have. I don't know if you actually have outright less movement.
You do.
Okay. Yeah. I've not played. Yeah, you've played this 2-player. I've only played this at 3 or 4.
Yeah.
So yeah, you have less movement at 2-player, 3-player, and 4-player. The big reason for that being more buildings are going to come out in a 4-player game than they are in a 2-player game, and as a result, you need to kind of scale what you can expect in terms of movement. It also changes which hazards are going to cost you more. So a green hand.
Well, not just hazards, but where anything an opponent's building.
Correct. Yes,
that has a green or black hand.
A toll required.
Yeah.
Yeah. It changes the value of that as well. And it overlays on a certain spot of the board that, if you look at the top, is actually pretty brilliantly designed in the flow of this. Mm-hmm. Move a certain amount of spaces, then go to this thing and either do one little action or do what's on the building. It's laid out pretty well in that sense.
Yes.
It also is one of those where you have discs that you'll kind of, as you upgrade, they'll pop off of your board. It's pretty clear in terms of what happens when that's going to happen, if anything.
Sure.
Not to mention, the board has little spaces for your workers as you cover those up with bonuses. All of that really works together pretty well. And so I don't have any real component complaints. Everything's a pretty solid quality, for sure.
Yeah, no, I agree. I enjoy the art. I think the graphic design's really clear. There are some confusing buildings that you're able to build, but eventually the iconography becomes clear. Red arrow means you're discarding a card. Green arrow means you're acquiring something. And so it's pretty clear, and there's also a good page that explains all the buildings, explains all the iconography really well. I agree. I think the player boards are excellent. I think there are so many visual reminders on the main board itself, as far as how many cows are out in the market for how many numbers of players. This is a graphic design triumph. I mean, I think it does really well. Lots of reminders to help players. Everything's incredibly clear. You talk about the fiddliness. Yeah, it's a very fiddly setup. Absolutely 100%. But I mean, for a game of this complexity, they tend to be. So that's not going to be a ding against it for me.
Part of it is the fiddliness within the game. Oh, okay, well, you went through this whole... Because every time you go through a loop, you have to put out 3 tiles. 1, 2, and 3. Now, Sean, you had a pretty clever solution for this, I thought.
I didisagree, but go on.
With your own cleverness of your solution?
Yeah, I disagree, but go on.
Oh, okay, sorry, you're a big dummy.
Go on.
Sean has 3 little tuck boxes where he's stored in kind of a traffic light order: green, blue, red, 1, 2, and 3.
Right.
What do you think would be a better solution?
So these are the tiles that are workers, hazards, and TPs.
Right.
And certain ones are labeled 1 that go in a particular slot, some are 2 that go in a particular slot, etc. So the idea here is that you're supposed to have these all separated in 1s, 2s, and 3s, have them face down because they're hidden. To me, that's a little extra setup, so I put them in these deck boxes, so that I just put them in there, I shake them up, and then you just reach in blindly. In theory, I think that's a good system, except that it's just kind of a pain in the butt to pull back the flap.
Oh, okay.
So a bag would be easier.
Sure. Yeah, I could say
if I had some bags, that's what I would do instead. But the idea of having it just be a blind draw is a little bit easier. It saves some time on setup.
Well, never mind. I take it all back. You're terrible at finding solutions to things.
In theory, it's a good solution.
Yeah.
It needs bags. It needs small bags.
So I think that's pretty... Yeah, components art, I think, is done pretty well. And for the complexity of game, I would agree with you, Sean. It is what it is. So if you know that going in, I think you're gonna be fine. This is an event type of game anyway, I think, for a lot of people.
Okay.
So
let's get into the meat of it, Alex.
Yes.
See what I did there? Meat.
Yeah. Cattle. Yeah, I get it.
Delicious beef.
All right, Sean. What is it about this one that is innovative, that clicks well? Because for whatever reason, it clicked well for both of us.
Yeah. So, as I mentioned before, I like engine building, and I like the chance to then use that engine. One complaint that I've heard from a couple people, from some of our locals, I've heard this online, is that the last 3 or 4 rounds of this game are just kind of rote. You're just doing the same thing over and over again. And people haven't liked that. For whatever reason, I love that, because that's basically me having completed my engine and maybe tweaking it a little bit, but now I'm just cranking the wheel and watching it produce. And it reminds me of craps. So the casino game craps, where you start off with some money, and as you win money, you're able to make more bets. Eventually, you have the board covered with a ton of bets. Your winnings are going to increase your bets, and you get to a point where you have, so maybe you started playing with like $50 or $100 or whatever, and now I have like $600 in bets on the table, where my investment was only $50, and every time the dice rolls, as long as it's not a 7, you're probably going to win some money. And to just kind of then watch that money roll, I mean, it doesn't happen all the time, obviously, but it's that feeling to me. And so that's what this feels like. I've set up my engine, and now I've got 3 or 4 turns of just cranking it and just watching it produce something. And I really enjoy that. I've done really well at this game, and I think something about this game just really clicks for me. And I've seen that in terms of my performance in the game, but also just in terms of my enjoyment of the game. There are so many things that you need to do to be efficient in various ways. You want to have a ton of money. It's hard to go through this game without money, because money lets you take advantage of every action that you take. So, for example, if I take an action to land on the neutral hire worker spot, there are 3 actions you can do there. You can discard a white 2 cattle card to get like $2 or $3, $2. And then you can hire a worker at face value, and then you can hire another worker at an extra $2 cost. If you're going there and you're maybe just hiring 1 worker, which is what most people are doing, especially early on in the game, that's fine. But if you can go there and you have the money to hire 2 workers, that's fantastic. You want to be able to maximize as much as you can off of every circuit you make from the start to Kansas City, whether you're stopping at, almost every spot along the way, or you're just doing it in 2 or 3 moves, depending on your movement, depending on how many buildings there are, you want to be as efficient as possible. This game absolutely rewards that. You want to get the most out of every action that you take. We were playing a game last night, and Raquel stopped at a building and realized, I can only really get this out of it. And later she's like, that was worthless. Like, I don't know why I kept doing that. So that's really important. You need to be able to have enough selling power, the cattle cards in hand, and you could do that in a bunch of different ways. You can not thin your deck at all, but you could buy a bunch of the cattle cards, the advanced cattle cards. They're going to increase the value. There are a bunch of 3 value cards. You start with 1s and 2s, right? Then you can buy some 3s, you can buy some 4s, you can buy some 5s. So you can do that. My hand last night, I had 1 4 and 1 3. The rest were the starting 2s and 1s. So instead of buying a bunch of cattle, instead what I did was I absolutely thinned my deck. There's a deck thinning component where you pay a movement in your train, you move backwards in your train, and you discard cards from your hand permanently. At the end of the game, Alex, I had 6 cards in my hand.
Pretty good.
In my deck/hand. Which I've never done before.
Crazy.
Yeah, it was very crazy. But you don't have to do that. You can also take advantage of cards or actions that let you just discard cards, and then you refill at the end of the turn. So there are ways to kind of cycle through cards. So whatever you're doing, you have to be doing some of that so that you're still winding up in Kansas City with the maximum output that you possibly can. I gotta say though, having a 6-card hand, and I had, I think, 3 circuits of that, was really cool.
I bet it would be.
Really cool. And on top of that, so that 6-card hand was only worth $14, right? But I had some certificates. Certificates are something else that increases the value. You usually have to spend them, but you're able to get these bonus tiles, which give you perpetual certificates. So your 14 is always going to be a 15, for example. Or if you have multiple of them, it's maybe +2. Lots of stuff going on here. So those are kind of some initial thoughts on gameplay, but I really enjoy how rewarding it is for trying to be efficient in everything you're doing.
Yeah, and there's a bit of a push your luck element to this too, especially when it's that blind draw. This is not completely controllable. So for instance, I was playing a heavy ribbon strategy. I didn't do much deck thinning. I had my deck kind of as is. I was trying to build a lot of buildings and go about it that way. And I was 1 card away from being able to at least do enough on the top track I don't think I would have been competitive in that game, but at least much better off. And it was 1 card down. I actually looked in the deck and then reshuffled. It was 1 card away from what I needed. But part of that's on me. There was some mitigation there. I could have thinned my deck more.
Yeah.
I could have done more actions to draw cards and better set up my hand. And instead I was relying on 1 draw at one time. There's absolutely a push your luck here and a trade-off sometimes. If I'm dumping this pair of cards out of my hand, if it's a pair of 2s, for instance, I might not get that color again. If I'm going through this loop too fast or not setting up my hand properly, I could end up getting hit with some major negative points at the end of the game and get kind of stuck in the mud this way. I like the objective cards, the tension of the objective cards. You can acquire these in various ways, oftentimes by how you ship. There's other ways through buildings that you can acquire them. They go into your deck, and when you draw them into hand, they take up a space, so you're not gonna be able to sell as much in terms of cattle as long as that's in your hand. If you play it for its action, which might be just straight money, it might be moving your train forward, it might be moving your person forward and taking an extra action basically without paying tolls. That might prove really handy, but if you aren't completing the objective card itself, it's going to be negative points at the end of the game. So there's a cool tension there as well. Right. And I've also found that the feel of every game I've played of this has been a little different. I would say incredibly different. And some of that's the order in which you put the buildings. Some of that is choosing A side or B side for different buildings. And some of that is just how the hazards come out. If hazards don't come out as frequently or a certain lane is clear, you can avoid tolls in a lot of cases or take advantage of some pretty cool bonus actions. Conversely, in the most recent game I played of this, Sean, the 4-player game, hazards just loaded up the board, and tolls were a huge factor. If you put a toll booth in the right spot, you get a good chunk of money over the course of the game from that. Yeah, I'd say probably $25 probably exchange hands throughout the course of the game. Whereas the game last night, I think maybe $6 exchange hands. Yeah, that's just kind of how it can go sometimes. I've also had a game where tolls were not a factor at all. I've seen games where how people put buildings out. You're taking advantage of that trees for money building. I've seen so many different combinations of things. Yeah, which is really cool. And there's a lot of ways to get points in this game too, which is nice. I think it all blends together in a nice package. But it is thinky, and if you're playing with folks who don't know what they're doing, this thing can drag on for a good chunk of time.
I've heard another complaint that there's a best decision, that you're limited in terms of the decisions you can make. I haven't found that to be the case. I mean, certainly there comes a point where I'm so committed to a particular strategy or a particular path that I know I'm not using these 6 buildings. They're not worth it to me. They're not helpful to me. But there's still a choice. Okay, do I go to this? Maybe I've got 5 movement at this point, right? Because I've increased my movement. I can go to this building and forfeit 2 movement, or I can just jump ahead to this building for the full 5 movement. What's the trade-off there? It really just depends on how your buildings are placed and in what way, what way you place them and what buildings you're placing there. Because there's value in just putting buildings out because they're worth a lot of points. I scored, I think, like 28 points in buildings last night.
Wow.
Yeah. I had all but 3, and I had my 11-point building out as well. So there's value in just putting them out. There's value in putting them out to, if they have hands to potentially, create those tolls. My choices are narrowed by what I'm doing. But I think that's by design. And if you're doing it right, you're still setting yourself up for meaningful choices, I think.
I found the game loaded with interesting decisions at times. I didn't feel this was one that played itself by any means.
Sure.
I think there are a lot of moments where, as you're going down the path, because it's sort of, the game does not play at all like this, but this piece of it does. I know, because I'm about to, I have to preface this
Don't
sometimes.
say Splendor.
No, it's not Splendor. Aquasphere is actually what I was going to bring up. And this idea that you have to pass on certain actions on certain loops. I know, for instance, I'm not going to be able to buy a cattle, which I might need to get better scoring cards in my deck. And if I pass up on that too many times, I'm going to be in trouble.
Sure.
If as I'm going on the loop, there's maybe only a certain number of black discs I'm going to be able to get out.
Right.
When I'm putting out a black disc, that can be a really tough decision. Do I increase my movement here? Is that what I need to be doing? Which might get me a one-time money bonus. Do I need to increase my movement less to get a victory point bonus end of game? Do I need to increase my hand size at this point? Can I afford to do that? Or do I need to increase my ribbon capacity because I'm going heavy ribbon strategy, and that jump from 4 to 6 is huge. So, I think it's loaded with meaningful choices even in the white discs on those stations. Which bar action do I want to set up here?
So that's the cool choice too, is when you're placing these discs out, which discs am I removing to give myself an extra benefit or extra actions? And some of them, the lower end ones, are these white discs. But the more powerful ongoing effects for the movement, for the hand size, are black discs, which start off at spot 10, which is Albuquerque, or Santa Fe, or it's Albuquerque.
Albuquerque.
It's Albuquerque. So there's interesting decision there. And like I said before, even just the placement of buildings completely changed the game. So for example, if you have one of the earlier buildings is the build a building building, and the hire workers building isn't until later, that's a completely different game than if those are reversed.
Yes.
Completely different. And there were times in multiple games where I'd be like, oh, I have to, for whatever reason, I have to skip the hire worker. Crap. I really needed that, but I also needed this. And this game's really good.
If the pair discard is later on the map of neutral
discard
locations,
2 of a kinds to get money.
That could be very problematic.
Yes.
Because you're gambling on your deck being good enough to draw into a good hand to sell the cattle. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of cool stuff going on here.
I think underline of a lot of what we're saying right now is that the variability of this game, at least for me, is off the charts. You've got these 10 buildings, they all have the 2 sides, and you can do all A, all B, you can do them random, everyone starts with the same setup. Ton of variability there. There are truly legitimate different paths to victory. And every game I've played, I have played in a very different way. And there are still different things. Oh, I should really... like, for example, there's one building, I think it's an A side building, you can discard a yellow card to get $10. That's a lot. And you can...
ton of money.
You can set yourself up for that. You can also... There's one building that lets you discard a bonus card. So if you have a bonus card in your deck and you're choosing not to play it for its bonus effect and have it there for scoring, you can instead keep it in your hand and you discard it to this building to get 2 bumps on certificate. That's also potentially huge. So there's just so many different ways to play this game and so many different ways to build your engine that right now I am so excited to continue to explore the different aspects of this game.
Yeah, I definitely have enjoyed it. What I will say is, in terms of the game that I enjoy the puzzle of this a lot, and it works out really well. I think the fragile piece of it, though, is, again, this is one where if a first-time player is in the mix, it could be tricky not only to teach, because it's a bit of a bear to teach, but it's also going to slow down the game a good chunk. And this game can take forever in the wrong situation.
Yeah.
So...
Let's talk about theme. So admittedly, this is not a theme I know a whole lot about. And we've kind of heard some rumblings that most of the cows are dairy cows. They're not beef cows. I don't know anything about that, and that's kind of weird if that's the case. I guess there's some thematic disconnects that I'm not particularly aware of because I don't know much about the cattle industry. So yeah, the mechanics are just so strong in this game that I don't know how much I care about those thematic disconnects. In terms of the actual thematic connections, I mean, you've got your different workers, your engineers help you train movement, your cowboys help you get more cows cheaper and better kinds, your craftsmen help you build better buildings. I guess there is some disconnect as far as the amount of cattle you're able to sell affects how far you can go, and I don't know that there is an actual connection that represents. I mean, certainly makes sense in terms of gameplay. Thematically, I'm not sure. What do you think?
Yeah, again, I agree with you. I don't know enough about cattle types or not species, but cattle type to really talk about the thematic disconnect there. I will tell you, it doesn't have the feel of a narrative type game. And it doesn't have, so for instance, Broom Service has a lot of moments of, oh, you're just spinning in circles, ha ha ha. This doesn't have that type of thing to it as much. It certainly has, oh, well, the hazards are getting clogged, but you're talking about this game in a fairly abstract sense. So yeah, the thematic narrative connection isn't there. I don't think it needs to be. I think the mechanics are strong enough to carry it through. But yeah, there's a thematic connection here for sure for this weight of game and this type of game, I think. There are certainly some disconnects. It's not a narrative experience by any means, and I don't think it needs to be.
Sure. So the guild says, Stefan...
Good luck with that.
Versure? Sorry, Stefan. Dang it. I'm sorry. He says, it's a slam dunk. Great tension, so many paths to victory. The game has so many mechanisms, and yet it is so streamlined and easy to teach. I'll take exception to the easy to teach part.
Yep, I was about to as well.
But he gives it a 6 out of 6.
There you go. Contender for top 10 of all time.
Yeah.
Scott Sexton on the other side of this one, he says, it's a good game, but I just don't quite get the mass appeal. Something about how all the pieces mesh together just seems off to me. Observant players can know they're going to lose and can't do anything about it roughly 2/3 of the way through the game. I'm hesitant to say it, but I strongly suspect that there's a runaway leader issue with the game. I don't think many people see it, though, because the scoring can be somewhat hidden during the game. Further, I'm at a bit of a loss for what exactly is fun about what you do in Great Western Trail. I need Euros to have a good hook or positive reinforcement loop for me to enjoy the game, and that is something sorely lacking here. To be fair, this is a beef I have with many other Rondell games too.
Beef. Ha
ha. Despite my complaints, I still think it's a solid enough game, but it's not for me. 3 out of 6.
Yeah, and I agree that the scoring is probably hidden. I think you can have a sense of how you're doing, a sense of how other players are doing. But it's one of those games where you have a score pad and you're going through the end and you're adding up all that. Does it have a runaway leader problem? I don't know.
It might.
In my 3 wins, I've won. So I played 4 times. My 3 wins were by, I think, like 15, 20 points, and then 34 points. So it was like the last game was 104.
And that's pretty solid.
104 to 70 to 60 was the last 3-player game I played. It's something that's kind of clicked for me. Like this game has just really clicked for me. And so maybe, but I don't... A lot of times a runaway leader problem can feel a little disheartening as you're playing the game, but because it's hidden, if it does have it, is that as much of a problem, do you think?
Well, he references observant players can know what's going on. And I think, for instance, in our 4-player game, it was pretty clear to me that you were going to win this game by a good chunk. Now, I will say in another game where I thought someone might be running away with it, it actually proved to be one of the closest games I've played of this. The scores were within 4 points of each other, basically. Yeah. So... I think there can be a runaway leader problem because, and this happens in engine builders in general, once you can turn a crank on a very efficient engine, you're going to pull away faster and faster and faster, and it's going to become more obvious. So, there could be a runaway leader problem. What I think is nice, though, is because you know what you're doing with your engine, the turns, especially late game, can go a little faster.
Right.
As you know kind of what you're doing, generally.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Chris Holmes says, for just about every other board game, one can start with an overview and dive on down to the mechanisms, but not Great Western Trail. These ingredients just can't be teased apart for description. Everything is everything else. Every plant interlocks into 2 or 3 others. Mombasa shares this quality, though Mombasa is denser. There's plenty of replayability after the first 2 or 3 teaching games. I enjoy how changing the order of the 7 neutral buildings has a large impact on the shape of the game, and if that somehow gets familiar a few dozen plays from now, I like the impact of randomly selecting sides for the player buildings. That's very clever. There's a few thematic disconnects, but they're subtle. But don't get me wrong, this is a fantastic Euro game, one that rises above most others, and it's about cows of all things. Wonderful.
Wonderful. Before we get to rating, Sean.
Yeah.
Player count.
Yes.
So you played this at all player counts.
I played this 4-4-3-2.
There we go.
I don't think I'm too crazy about it at 2. It's not one I'd think to bring out at 2. I liked it quite a bit at 3. I think I might prefer this at 4, though. And usually I prefer a game at 3 to 4, but it's a little bit more interesting. There's a wider array of workers that are available. It's a little bit more interesting in terms of the tolls, in terms of the paths. 3 and 4, I think, is both excellent. I think I might just barely prefer 4 over 3.
I prefer 3 over 4, I think, because of a play length issue
Sure.
for me. 4, even if people know what they're doing, it just overstays its welcome just a bit for me.
Okay.
3, I think, is definitely the sweet spot, and if people know what they're doing, it flies and feels real good and all that fun stuff. I can't imagine it working as well at 2. I just can't.
Yeah, I wasn't particularly crazy about it at 2.
So, all right, final thoughts and rating. We rate things on a 6-point scale, 1 being poorly designed but playable, not necessarily fun, 6 being an all-time favorite that's a contender for the top 10. And based on how we've talked about this, I think folks know it's going to be in the higher end of that. For me, I think this comes down to a 5. A great game will rarely turn down a play of it. And that's where I come down on this one. I enjoy how the mechanisms interlock in this one. It's not my favorite Fister by any means, but what it does on the heavier end of the spectrum here, I think works pretty well. I like that merry-go-round. I like how the board can change and force you to pay tolls and force you to adjust your strategy a little on the fly, even though your long-term strategy oftentimes, once you're going in a direction, you're going to go in that direction. There's interesting decisions here, and I think the theme works well enough. I think 5 is a pretty solid 5 right there in the middle for me. Great game, will rarely turn out a play of it.
Very cool. So I got my initial play of this at 2 players about a month ago. Raquel and I played this. Oh, it was right when I was I just starting to come down with the cold? Yeah, I remember because my throat was really sore. The explanation was even worse because my throat hurt.
Oh, that's tough.
So then it had been a couple weeks since that play until I got future plays. And in the meantime, this game had come out quite a bit at Empire. And there were some people whose opinions I respect and whose tastes kind of aligned with mine were kind of poo-pooing the game. And so it was kind of just in the back of my mind that had some kind of effect. Basically, at 2 players, I said, I don't think I'm crazy about it at 2 players. I think it's really good. I think it's going to be a lot better with 3 or 4. And then that thought kind of got taken down a bit by some of these other people and their thoughts on it. Since the additional plays since then, I kind of had said, all right, this is probably going to wind up being a 5. Just like you, a great game will rarely turn out a play of it. My final play last night really changed that. This is going to be a 6. This is going to be the third 6. Scythe, Millennium Blades, Great Western Trail, an all-time favorite that's a contender for the top 10. I love how many different ways there are to truly play this game. And I love the fact that I'm able to play with that engine a couple times before the game ends. I really enjoy the decisions in this game. I was convinced this was going to be a 5. I'm like, yeah, it's going to be a 5. I don't see it going down. I even told you, I'm like, I'm going to give it one more chance to see if, I don't think it's going to become a 6, but I really enjoy this game. There's just something very satisfying about the gameplay. I'm surprised at myself a little bit that I'm giving this a 6. Terraforming Mars mechanically could have been a 6, but some of those other issues just kind of held it back for me. I think I might like this a little bit better than Terraforming Mars, which will be interesting when you hear our top 10 list.
Okay, so wait, let's talk this out right. Yeah, because that's the first thing I thought about when you said 6 instead of 5.
Yeah.
The first thing I thought about.
Yeah.
So we recorded our top 10 list of the year on Thursday.
2 days ago.
Yeah, 2 days ago. Sean, being a jerk, got in some plays since then that may or may not have changed things. So instead of waiting until the redo, would that okay. Folks, you're about to listen to the top 10 list here in a bit.
Yeah.
Would that have changed your order?
Maybe.
Yes.
Probably.
Yes.
So,
if you're giving it a 6 versus a 5, yes.
It's what it is.
Okay. So just know that Sean's list has already changed, which is maybe not surprising given the fact that neither of us have played Star Wars Rebellion, and Sean is anticipating that would be pretty high up on his list.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. So final thoughts. For me, Great Western Trail is a 6. I really enjoy this game.
Final thoughts for me are that we should do the review before doing the top 10 list of the year if we're going to do a review in the final episode.
Sure.
That's my final thought.
Logistics, Alex.
Logistics. All right.
So that's going to do it for our review of Great Western Trail. Hey, Alex, we actually have an extra copy of Great Western Trail to give away.
How did that happen?
Thanks to Stronghold Games. There's a little error. We got shipped an extra copy, but we're going to have some contest details at the end of the episode, so continue to stay tuned for more information about that. But that's going to do it for the review. A 5 from Alex and a 6.
A space-time continuum breaking 6 from Sean.
There you go. Well, no Duke's Double Take this week, and no discussion topic. We're just doing our top 10 games of 2016, which we've already recorded, as you've heard. So there might be some interesting things in there where we're referencing the fact that it's video, but we're just using the same audio.
Because we're lazy.
Well, you thought we were going to be doing this again.
I was worried about it because I think it would have sounded very rehearsed.
Yeah. I was like, what are you talking? Yeah, it was weird. So anyway, we have we've had a YouTube channel, but like I said, we're ramping up video production. So you can continue listening here, obviously, or if you want to go check it out on YouTube, we'd love that. However, regardless of what you do, I would love it if you would take some time to go over to YouTube and subscribe to our channel. Like I said, there's going to be a lot more coming out over the next, time period. It's going to happen. A lot of stuff is coming out. So please go subscribe over there. We've got a couple hundred right now, but I really want to build this up into kind of a full-blown YouTube channel. And I think that we've got a ton of listeners, and I'd love it if you'd go support us over there. So yeah, if you want to see our kind of first inaugural brand new YouTube channel stuff with our new set, go check that out. But otherwise, continue listening. And either way, be sure to check out the end of the episode for contest details for Great Western Trail. So let's get over the top 10, Alex. Hey there, everybody, this is Sean.
And Alex.
And we're the Dukes of Dice, and welcome to our brand new Duchy video set.
Yeah. Also, like most things on the podcast, didn't have much to do with this one.
Well, the Duke-a-wee.
Duke-a-wee.
Yeah.
Helped with, I helped with there, and that. That's the extent of my help. So, yeah, about a 1090. Okay. Kind of, at least 10% of the work to provide you those boxes.
Well, the Duke-a-wee, are going to be ramping up our video production in 2017.
Yes.
And so this is kind of our inaugural video of the new video production, which you're going to help a lot with, too. At least maybe not for the next 4 months. But,
okay.
But yeah, we figured...
This is off to a great start.
We figure let's break in the new set with the top 10, our top 10 games of 2016. And what better time than the end of the year to look back at the awesome year in gaming that it was. To reflect. Exactly. Now, we do this a couple different ways, because later in April, we usually do a revised list.
Yes.
And so this is kind of just a snapshot of where we are now. We haven't played every game out there, and this lets us kind of just... As we've played the games that we have so far, this is where we're at.
Spoiler alert, this is an opinion, and it's based on it's a snapshot in time.
Yeah, there you go. So, if you're not familiar with who we are, again, we're the Dukes of Dice. If you want to subscribe to our channel below, that'd be great. And we also have an audio podcast that we produce every week, Alex. Did you know that?
Yes.
Every week. You do help with that.
I do help with that.
Yeah, you sure do.
Help.
So, so let's kind of jump into some methodology here. What were you looking at for your top?
I looked at the top 10 games I enjoyed the most this past year in the order in which I enjoyed them.
What system did you use?
So basically, I put on the games that I thought I was going to have. I made a big list of games that I knew for sure one way or the other might be on there, might not be on there.
Was it a list of 11 games?
No, there were more than that. And I would bold ones I knew were on there and put them on there as I realized it. I will tell you, the top half of my list was pretty easy.
Okay.
The bottom half of my list... 1 through 5. Yes, 1 through 5.
Sure.
The bottom half of the list, 6 through 10, brutal.
Okay.
Brutal. Tough to kind of sort out what goes where, and that feels much more changeable. The top of the list seems pretty locked in, definitely the top 3.
Okay. So I had a list of 18 games.
Okay.
That's what I came up with, and I kind of went through things that we'd reviewed, things we played. I looked at the Board Game Geek list of 2016, all the games that came out. And I actually went to a website called Challonge, Challonge, so like challenge, but with an O.
Yeah. And
it sets up these tournaments. You could set up like a bracket-style tournament. I set up a round-robin tournament. 17 rounds.
Okay.
Of every single game in my top 18 pitted against one another.
Nice.
And it spit out a ranking, and I didn't actually make any adjustments because I'm like, yeah, that looks about right.
Cool.
So every step of the way, I had to make a choice. This game or this game. This game or this game.
Nice.
And it's pretty interesting. Now, because we're doing this at the end of the year, we haven't obviously played every game. There are definitely some games that I have not played and I own, or I've maybe only played once. And so I'm not comfortable putting them on my list, but I feel like they should be mentioned as possible contenders come April.
Yeah, come April, they may make it onto the list if you've gotten more plays of the game.
Yeah. So just real quick, I'm just going to list them off.
Sure.
Liberty or Death, the coin game from GMT, Star Wars Rebellion, which came out early in the year and is a shame, a travesty that I haven't played that yet.
Okay.
Shame. Manchester Madness 2nd Edition, Innis, or Inish, technically is how it's pronounced. I only got one play of that in. Honshu, got one play of that at BGG Con. Mechs vs. Minions, I've only played that once. Codex from Sterling Games, I've only played that once. And Railroad Revolution from What's Your Game, I haven't played that, but I expect it might have a shot at being something I'd enjoy. So those are kind of my contenders.
But not on there.
Not in consideration.
Mainly because of not enough plays.
Correct.
Or no plays, period. So my not enough plays category, junk art, I gave some consideration to.
Okay.
I only got in one round of that. That definitely. Honshu, strong contender.
Oh, yeah.
King Domino was another one that I considered, but just didn't get enough plays in.
I thought King Domino would have made it. Okay, but only
one play.
Okay.
Only one. Okay. One play.
Oh, all right.
So
it's a hard game to get to the table all of 8 minutes.
I'll get in some more plays of it soon, but for this list, didn't make it on not enough plays. And then I didn't play Star Wars Rebellion. Who knows? Might have a chance. Probably not for me. Yeah. We'll see. Sushi Go Party I own.
Okay.
Haven't played. I keep hearing amazing things about.
Okay.
But didn't crack the list because I haven't actually played it. And then Tyrants of the Underdark. Ooh. You've told me good things.
Yeah, you might like it. If you like Clank, then you'll probably like Tyrants of the Underdark.
We'll get to Clank in a bit here, maybe. Maybe.
Okay.
I mean, definitely.
All right, so I also had some honorable mentions.
Yep.
Again, I had a list of 18, but I'll just give you the 11, 12, 13.
Mm-hmm.
Ice Cool.
Yeah.
Which,
nice.
I love it.
Cool.
That's my go-to dexterity game, I think. I really enjoy Ice Cool. Cry Havoc, which I'm surprised. I'm shocked and surprised, and it didn't make my top 10 based on where it was earlier in the year, in my estimation. But I just didn't quite get there. And then also Thief's Market, which is a Tasty Minstrel game from one of our sponsors. But I really enjoy the bluffing and the manipulation of the dice and stealing from other people. But so three very, very solid games that, they're pretty good.
Three that were just off the list for me. Captain Sonar.
Yeah.
Honorable mention. Really good big group game. You can play that one with 8 players and should play it with 8 players.
Yes.
Works really well. Stressful, but not to the level of stress that we've talked about with something like Space Cadets Dice Duel. Really enjoyed that one. Cottage Garden, just off the list. Yeah.
Okay, I thought that would have made that for you.
Yeah, not quite. But it was definitely one I thought about. Nice Uwe game, does really well with that. Expands on Patchwork. I still prefer Patchwork, but this does some cool things with that model, and good job by Uwe on that one. And then Role Player, just off the list.
Okay.
Role Player, enjoyed that one. That's one where you're building an RPG character using rolled dice and trying to fit certain criteria. Enjoyed that one in the number of plays. I don't know how many more times I'm going to get it back to the table, but I enjoyed it well enough to at least think about it for this list.
We never played that together, did we?
I don't think we did.
I don't think we did. Okay. Yeah. Interesting. All right, well, let's jump into it. Our top 10 of 2016.
Number 10.
All right, my number 10, mainly because it's really fun to say, is Potion Explosion.
Yeah. Okay. I thought this might be higher up, but I figured it'd be on your list.
This is Cool Mini or Not game in the or not category. Simon now, I guess. Whatever.
Come on.
Potion Explosion, this is one that I first played at Dice Tower Con, and boy oh boy, it really grabbed me right off the bat. It's this matching thing where you're pulling marbles out and then hoping other marbles connect and explode to help fulfill potions. It's a combo-tastic game. Pretty quick, reasonably easy to teach for what it is, and looks gorgeous on the table. Great components to this one. Really enjoyed my plays of this one, and it's definitely a worthy thing on the top 10. I'm just not sure how many more times I'm going to get it in terms of... There's some replayability there. Sure. But it wasn't one that I necessarily looked to go out and buy. Although I did enjoy the game, and it certainly, I think, is worthy of the top 10. So, Potion Explosion, my number 10.
All right. Well, my number 10 is Beast for Odin from Z-Man Games, Uwe Rosenberg. This is, of all of Uwe's games this year, this is the big box. This is the one that is pretty heavy, literally, and in terms of game weight. This is taking a bunch of his different mechanics from a bunch of his different games and putting them all into one... I was going to say concise package, but it's certainly not concise. So you have the Tetris style, the polynomial, is that right? Polyomino, there you go.
Come on.
The polyomino Tetris style tile placement that you have in Patchwork or you have in Cottage Garden. There is conversion of resources like you would have in Le Havre. There's worker placement like you would have in Caverna or Agricola. And you are a Viking that is trying to hunt, who's trying to go out on raiding parties, who's trying to smith equipment and various jewelry and things like that. And there's a little engine building to it too, because the more you cover your board with the Tetris pieces, the more income you get and the more extra bonuses you get. And it is a very thinky game it is a little overwhelming. There are like 60 action spaces that you can choose from. And
visually, it is absolutely overwhelming.
Yeah. And on top of it, there are 4 columns. The first column requires 1 worker, second column requires 2 workers, and 3, 4, and so on. And so you have to decide, okay, am I going to take this one big action, because you start off, I think, with 6 or 7, depending on if you're playing 2-player or more, of the workers, and you get more workers every turn, which is kind of nice. So later on, you're able to do bigger and better actions more frequently and things like that. I really enjoyed this. I'm kind of surprised it's only 10, but when I compared everything, that's where it shook up.
You did do a tournament.
I did. But kind of looking at the rest of my list, I kind of see why it's number 10. It belongs in my collection alongside all my other Uwe games. And I own all of the big ones, except for Gates of Loyang.
Okay.
But I think that I have enough other stuff in terms of Uwe games that I'm happy to play other times. And so, yeah, this is a solid 10.
Cool.
All right, so that is Feast for Odin from Z-Man.
Number 9.
So you mentioned it earlier, Alex. My number 9 is Role Player from Thunderworks Games, designed by Keith Matejka. And this is a crazy game. I remember when this was on Kickstarter, it didn't sound interesting to me at the time. And then as I saw people get their Kickstarter fulfillment and pictures come in, it sounded more and more interesting. The entire concept of the game is building an RPG character. Yeah. That's it. And that's something I enjoy doing too. So I'm surprised it didn't quite catch my interest at first. And what you're doing is you are drafting these different colored dice. You are taking all these dice to fill in your character sheet, which has the classic strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, charisma. There we go.
Come on now.
I don't have the charisma to remember charisma.
No, you don't.
I guess that'd be intelligence.
Well, yeah, okay.
Yeah. Anyway.
I'm not dealing with memory anyway.
So as you fill these different things in, what you're trying to do is you're trying to get a target number on each of them depending on your class.
Right.
And then the different colors are going to line up with your backstory because you want to create a certain pattern. In addition, there's an alignment that you have. So you've got your neutral good or whatever. And moving around this little marker on that can feed different action cards that you get. Or when you buy certain cards, you have to move in a certain direction, which is additional bonus points. Really cool, thinkier than it looks. I mean, it's just a bunch of dice, it's your player boards, it's some cards, but it's some really difficult decisions. Do I want to make sure I get a certain total in dexterity so I get these points, but then I'm not going to have the right color to match my backstory? And lots of cool combos, lots of ways to manipulate the dice, because when you take like a strength action, for example, it lets you flip any die in your board. So a 6 becomes a 1 or vice versa. Dexterity lets you reroll. Wisdom gives you an up or down of 1.
You only have so many actions in each of these too. That's the decision as well. Yeah. You're limited in how many times you can do each of these things.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some cool decisions here for sure.
So I've played this, I think, 7 or 8 times. I got in like 4 plays of this at BGG Con.
Yeah.
And
this was one of the hot games at BGG Con.
Yeah. And I'm ready to play a bunch more of this. I really enjoyed it. So that's my number 9, Role Player.
All right, my number 9 is another one that ended up being the hotness for a good chunk of time here. That's Clank.
Yeah.
Clank, a thematic deck-building adventure where you're kind of delving into dungeons, building up your deck to try and sneak through areas, fight off critters as you go, grab treasure, and then get out. And that's the trick with this one, is there's that timer that goes. That once someone gets out, that's going to trigger a very quick grab stuff and get out quick before you get smoked by the dragon. Really cool, kind of a bag building element where you're trying to avoid having your stuff get into the bag.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're building a group bag. It's not a typical, you're building anyway. But it works thematically, and it's one of the better deck build. I like deck building for a purpose.
Sure.
My favorite game of all time, Baseball Highlights 2045, first mention in the video. Clank scratches
we're doing that over here too?
Absolutely.
Okay, just check.
Yeah.
Go on, tell me more about Clank.
I mean, I am until I leave for several months. So yeah, that's my number 9, Clank. It played well just about every time I did. There's multiple paths to victory, interesting decisions, and just generally a lot of fun. The theme really works for this one.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's Clank, my number 9.
Very cool.
Number 8.
All right, my number 8. This is one that was up for a big time award. Didn't win. And I'm not surprised it didn't win. Imhotep is my number 8. Imhotep. This is I believe it was up for the Spiel des Jahres. And it was kind of the one that felt more like what an old Spiel des Jahres winner would have been.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I first got this one in at Dice Tower Con as well, and it really grabbed me. It's really fairly easy to teach, fairly simple in what's going on, but a lot of cool decisions. Do I reload here and hope this boat doesn't sail off and take this action I might need? Do I put this first or third on the ship in order to maybe get a better spot in the temple area so that my stuff better connects? Or if I do that, am I risking getting a worse draft in the market, in the card area? Basically, you're sailing these ships to try and end up scoring the most points through a number of different ways, and it all works together here, but also teaches easily enough for your typical, I'm not saying it's gateway necessarily, but it's close.
I'd call it gateway.
It's close.
Yeah, I'd call it gateway.
It's certainly easy enough to teach. It works really well, and I had a lot of fun with it. Not to mention there's the variability of, hey, you can flip it over and there's the A-side, B-side kind of thing.
Right.
Everything works really well with this one. This was my favorite of the 3 games in the Spiel category, even though I don't think it'll have as much of a long-lasting impact as Codenames will.
Sure.
So that's Imhotep, my number 8.
And my number 3 of those games in the category.
Yeah, fair enough.
All right. My number 8, we actually just reviewed in episode 123, Oracle of Delphi. Delphi.
Oh, jeez.
Delphi. Was it 123?
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me this is here, but
So this is
I'm just disappointed.
This
in
is
your taste.
a tasty minstrel game designed by Stefan Feld, and you can hear more about it in the podcast that just released. But I've talked about how I don't like Pick 'em and Deliver, but I like Pick 'em and Deliver here. I wasn't expecting to like this game because of that, and I do. It works well. There's the race to it, but it still felt like a Feld to me. I've heard a lot of people say it doesn't feel like a Feld, and I don't agree with that. It feels like it. The action selection is very reminiscent of Feld. The manipulation, the dice manipulation, luck mitigation is very reminiscent of Feld, at least in my mind. So yeah, it's a pretty meaty race game, but it doesn't have all of the trappings of, say, a Firefly or Merchants and Marauders, which are a little more sandboxy. But at least they're pick 'em and deliver elements. But yeah, I really enjoyed this a lot more than I thought. It's in the top half of my Felds, which you were not a fan.
No.
Yeah, you were not a fan
because it has some hinky things in it to me, and we
Yeah.
don't have, go listen to the podcast if you're curious about that. I didn't have kind things to say.
Well, what's interesting, and I mentioned this on the podcast, both Oracle of Delphi and Feast for Odin, so 2 games in my top 10, both have a characteristic dice rolling that you want to expect in Euros designed by these guys. So, I mean, Feld does have dice rolling in his games, but it's not that kind of Ameritrashy style where value matters. It's just it determines what you can get. Right. For the most part, there's some exceptions to board, but not really. So it's just interesting that those both kind of came out in the same year. You wouldn't quite expect that from these guys, but it was good. I really liked Oracle of Delphi. I'm excited to play more, and that's my number 8.
Number 7.
All right, my number 7, I expect this to be a crossover on your list.
Okay.
Is Capital Lux.
Yes?
Yes?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, confirming.
Oh,
Well, it's one of the few 6s I handed out this year.
All right. Oh, that's true. So I gave this a 5. You know, we have a 6-point rating system on our podcast. So I gave this a 5, which is a very good score. This is a pretty small card game. Or deck of cards with some tokens, and that's about it. There's not much to it in terms of components. But it's a really interesting choice that you're making. You're building out either the capital, which is a shared tableau, and when you build out to the capital, you're going to get some sort of bonus action based on what profession you play. Or you build it to your hometown, which is going to help you with scoring. But the trick is that you need to have enough of a value in each profession out in the capital so that your hometown comes in under it in terms of numeric value. And so it's an interesting decision of, well, I want to play it here for points, but if I play too many here, then it's going to go over that threshold, and I'm going to lose all of those things. And ultimately, at the end of the game, you're scoring the points on all of the cards that are remaining in your tableau. Interesting decisions of, when do I take the action here that's going to let me steal a card from the capital and move to my hometown, or let me add a hidden modifier that I get to see down to one of these professions. Lots of interesting decisions, a lot of game in this little tiny package, and I really enjoy it. So that's Capital Lux by Aporta Games, designed by Elif Svensson and Christian Amundsen Ushby.
All right. My number 7 game is designed by a guy I named my fantasy board game team after. Alexander Pfister, and it's Great Western Trail.
Oh, it made it. Okay.
It did make it, and maybe not so surprising, because I've enjoyed every play I've had of this.
Yeah. Great
Western Trail, kind of a merry-go-round mechanic to this one, where you're taking a number of laps through a map that changes effectively as you build buildings, change the landscape. And hazards come out, Native American tribes come out in the forms of teepees. And this works on a number of levels. This is a heavier end Pfister, but when everyone knows what they're doing, it flows really, really well. We're about to talk about this either on the episode that just released soon after this video came out. A ton of fun. A lot of different strategies to victory. You can go heavy building. You can try and build up your deck filled with cows and try and ship those cows to further spots down the road. You can move your train down the line and try and claim stations and do well that way. A lot of interesting paths to victory. It's an engine building game where you're building that engine, cranking it, and letting it run. And it works. It works really well. I enjoy the theme here. I know for some people there's some disconnects. It also doesn't hurt that there's Albuquerque and Santa Fe in the game. So really well done by Alexander Pfister. He's one of the hottest designers out there. And I thought he did a great job with Great Western Trail.
I have nothing to say about that right now.
Okay, great.
Number 6.
All right, my number 6 is by another hot designer, but one whose games I typically don't enjoy as much as the broader board gaming public. Eric Lang. Arcane Academy. Number 6 on my list. Arcane Academy.
And Kevin
Wilson. Yeah, I always forget Kevin Wilson. Sorry, Kevin. It is superb. This one was very much under the radar, continues to be under the radar, and really just hasn't gotten the love that I think it deserves.
That's unfortunate. It's a really good game.
It's one where you're picking up tiles and building paths. It's fairly simple mechanically. You have 2 different resources. You have energy for spells, and you have these crystals to buy items. Shards, as they're known in the game. And you are grabbing tiles and adding to your board, activating those tiles on a turn, or removing everything off of there. It works really well. It's simple mechanics, but with a good amount of depth. Number of paths to victory. I've played it a ton, and I've enjoyed it just about every time I've played it. I've won in a number of different ways. It's combo-tastic. It doesn't overstay its welcome. It's a pretty quick game that plays very well and scales decently. It works at a number of player counts. I really enjoyed Arcane Academy, and I wish more folks would give this one a try if they haven't already. So that's Arcane Academy, my number 6 game.
All right. My number 6, Alex needs your help for this.
Huh?
Happy sailing! My number 6 game. Can
All right.
That?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, can you?
What's your game of Dice Tower Con?
It was. I'm
surprised it's not higher, Sean.
It seems odd to me that this makes my top 10. I mean, it's a light party game. North Star Games is the publisher, designed by Ken Gruhl and Quentin Weir. And this is just a really simple, stupid, fun game. You are trying to shed cards from your hand, or from your deck. Everyone has the same deck of 12 cards? Mm-hmm. 12 cards, yeah. And all you're trying to do is you're trying to match up with other people the card that you've drawn. And so it's, big group, and you're just looking around. You need to high five. So high five, high five, high five, woo! And then you throw the card down. Happy salmon, woo!
At least 3.
Fist bump, and then switcheroo.
I'm not doing the switcheroo.
We're not doing the switcheroo, where you get up and move. You do that out loud. You can do that silently. It is incredible because I can be dead on my feet, ready to go to sleep, ready to crash because I've been gaming all day, and this will re-energize me.
Yeah.
So I love this game, and it makes sense that it's here on my top 10.
I'm glad it's on your list.
All right. So that's my number 6, Happy Salmon.
Number 5.
All right. Well, we're in the bottom half now, Alex.
Yep. Well, top half. I mean, depending on how you look at it.
Yeah.
Top half. I call it top half.
Lower numerically, but higher in terms of praise.
And I will say, there's a decent gap for me between 6 and 5.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Well, my number 5 is Arkham Horror, the card game, the new living card game that just came out from Fantasy Flight Games, designed by Nate French and Matthew Newman. This game is so good, Alex. And I'm really excited for you to try this because I think that you're going to like it. As much as you like, say, Pathfinder, the adventure card game, I feel like you're going to enjoy this possibly more. I don't know that I enjoy this more than Pathfinder, the adventure card game, but I like this quite a bit. There is a very strong narrative hook. I mean, we talk about theme in games, and we kind of make a distinguishing... we distinguish between narrative and theme.
Yeah.
And I know you really like when there's some narrative element that grabs you, and you're telling your own story.
Organically, if it comes up organically.
But this does such a great job of creating its own narrative hook through the scenario. And it feels like it's a mix of a card game and an RPG, much more so than say Pathfinder does. Pathfinder does it mechanically, right? You've got the difficulty checks, you're rolling the dice, and you're leveling up your character. But as far as on the narrative side, it doesn't quite get there on its own. Arkham Horror does. And so it's a living card game, so you're going to be able to deck build. Your deck will get better over time, like it will in Pathfinder. And it's really good. It's really hard.
Yeah.
But it's really good. And I'm excited to play more of the scenarios that keep coming out. So that's my number 5, Arkham Horror, the living card game.
My number 5 is probably one of the games that will be longest lasting from this year. And I think one that people will remember as a signature game of this year.
Okay.
And I'm pretty sure it's higher up on your list.
Okay.
Terraforming Mars.
Yep, that's what I was going to guess.
It's one of those games that I think the theme hooked people. Certainly Mars is in the imagination of a lot of people. But the mechanics did the trick as well.
Sure.
This is a game where you're trying to change the surface of Mars. You're trying to put out oceans. You're trying to increase the oxygen level. You're trying to increase the temperature and make Mars a livable place. It works really well thematically, but the card play here is great too. There's a lot of interesting decisions in terms of how you're paying for cards, a lot of different paths to victory. You can go heavy energy and invest in heat. You can try and build up a number of cards. I had a game where I was pretty successful and actually got the planner achievement, which I've seen rarely happen, but it can happen. You could go green heavy, where you're trying to just build a number of gardens around the planet, or city heavy, or any number of other strategies involving pets, microbes, take your pick. This game has everything. And I think the only downside to it is I think it was let down a bit by the production.
Right.
And I think if the production stepped up a bit on this one, as some of the games further up on the list, or at least one of the games further up on the list, you might be talking about this as almost an all-timer. I think it got let down a little bit by that. But the gameplay itself is super solid, and I've enjoyed just about every play I've had of this. I really think it's remarkable just how many different ways there are to play it, and how many different ways there are to win it and do well at this. So, Terraforming Mars, that's my number 5.
Number 4.
All right, my number 4, Sean mentioned this one earlier, and I think for good reason. Capital Lux, one of the few 6s I handed out this year. I love simple games, but with deep mechanics and interesting decisions, and this one fits the bill. Yeah, it's got that weird disc versus butter pat thing. But, as Sean mentioned, there's this great decision that you come to, one, on do I need to play this one for an action out there, or do I want to put it in front of me where it's potentially worth more points? Can I press my luck? Are the modifiers on each of these different districts, or different categories of cards, are those modifiers going to completely screw me over, or are they going to help me? What information does someone have at a different point? It plays really smoothly, it plays really well. And I've enjoyed this one a lot. It's one that I'm still actively looking to pick up. And when I'm adding it to a collection, I don't buy nearly as many games as you do, Sean.
Sure.
When I'm buying a game, it's usually a pretty good sign.
Yeah.
So Capital Lux, really solid, especially on that lighter end, less playtime, smaller table space card game kind of weight. Perfect game for this year. I loved it.
All right.
Capital Lux.
Well, my number 4 is Great Western Trail. You already mentioned it. Alexander Pfister, Stronghold Games. This is a pretty, another meaty game. Interesting Euro game. There's that, you call it a merry-go-round? Yeah. You're going around these paths, right?
It's a lap, yeah.
Yeah, you're doing a lap. It's some people kind of refer to it as similar to Kalis in that sense. And you are building an engine. There's some deck building as you're trying to get more diversified cattle and higher value cattle in your deck, so that once you complete the circuit and get to Kansas City, you can get more income and get farther along on the track. And what if you're listening to the podcast, you will have just heard our review of this.
Yes.
If not, then you can go back and listen to that in episode 124. But one of the things that I'm going to mention I like about this is that I like engine building, and I like the opportunity to let your engine run for a while after you've kind of assembled it. And in a lot of games, you don't get to let it run a couple turns. And I've heard people complain that, the last couple turns are just repetitive, you're doing the same thing. And I kind of like that. I kind of like building that engine and then getting to actually play with it a bit.
Right.
And even doing the same thing over and over, I like seeing what I built and seeing how well I'm able to crank it out.
Right. The fulfillment for me of I went heavy ribbon, heavy building strategy last time.
Yeah.
The fulfillment of either being one card off, in my case, and not quite making it work, or getting my biggest building out there for the first time ever in that game and having that work. You have these moments of accomplishment, whether you win or lose. So, yeah, I agree with you. I like it.
All right, so that's my number 4, Great Western Trail.
Number 3.
All right, my number 3, Terraforming Mars.
Yeah.
And since we reviewed it, a couple weeks ago, I pretty much knew that there was going to be my number 3 game. I was pretty certain I knew what number 1 was going to be, number 2, and then I played this, and after 10, 11, 12 plays, I'm like, yeah, it's not better than 1 and 2, but it's going to probably be my number 3 game. And for all the things that you mentioned, I mean, I'm in complete agreement. There's its own bit of engine building, which is something that I like. It's a theme that I enjoy. I've read science fiction books on that theme. And it's just really fun to see what can I do with the cards that are given to me, whether you're drafting or not, but you should draft.
Yes.
What can I assemble out of this that's going to help me the most? And Lots of interesting decisions. There's that great revving up of I'm building my income. It's so good, and I'm happy to teach this game because I don't think it's too difficult of a teach, and a lot of the things about it are so intuitive. For example, Great Western Trail, it's a bear of a teach.
Yeah.
I mean, a tremendous teach. This one seems a lot easier because there's a lot more intuitive rules to it, and then on top of that, everything just kind of makes sense. It all boils down to something pretty simple, but really it's those card interactions that add the depth of play. So, fantastic game. My number 3, Terraforming Mars.
All right, my number 3, Sean, I need your help for this one. Happy Salmon. So this...
Was that 2 or 3?
It was
2.5.
Okay, fine. 1, 2, 3.
Okay.
There we go. All right, so my number 3 is Happy Salmon, and Sean really, really sold this well. My only summary to this one is, it is gamer Viagra. In a good way. I guess that, I don't know how that would be bad. I mean, it might be bad. It could be bad in weird situations. Anyway, I've talked myself into a corner. I'm going to just go another. Anyway, Happy Salmon, I have had more fun with this game than I think I've had with just about any other game I've played this year. It's one that's brought smiles to so many faces, especially in convention settings, where it just draws people in. People want to try it. People want to play it. It comes in a neoprene salmon pouch.
Yeah.
I mean, just from that alone. And the fact that I'm excited about the expansion, which is literally the same game, just different colored cards and a different colored fish. The fact that I'm that excited about it tells you a lot about this one. It's one I've seen go over so well with so many different people. If you don't like this one, Matthew, you are a grouch. You are a grouch and a curmudgeon, and you need to play it. To bring a smile to your face, because that's what this game does. I love the joy it's brought, and I'm really happy to have it in the collection, because when the right number of players are around, and the situation's perfect, that's the one. One of my favorite memories of the year, by the way, is you hip-checking poor Anthony into another table.
Yeah.
Well, that and Trader Happy Salmon, the Trader variant, demonstrated here, because it actually works in a video. Hey, Sean, high five! Oh, damn it.
Yep.
Oh, so heartbreaking. That's my number 3, Happy Salmon.
Number 2.
So, Alex, you're going to give your 2 here in a second. Well, yeah, I said R2, because I'm pretty sure...
It's the same thing.
My number 2 is your number 2. My number 1 is your number 1.
Weird.
Which says a lot.
Well, so we had Matainai in common last year.
My 1, your 2.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we had that in common, and we can agree on some games sometimes. I think there's some decent crossover on this list. But yeah, top level, maybe not super surprising with these two, because I think these two were ones that just blew my mind in different ways.
Yeah.
So let's talk about them.
Okay.
Both of our number 2s, Millennium Blades.
Yep.
It helps that it's a local Albuquerque company, Level 99 Games. Brad and the folks over there do great work. This is one that I wasn't going to think I was going to enjoy, and you didn't think I would go anywhere near this.
I was convinced you would hate this game. Absolutely convinced.
And the truth of the matter is, with the sheer variety in cards, the fun themes that I do connect with, I don't connect with... So this is, for folks who don't know, this is a CCG simulator.
Yes.
It's kind of doing the big metagame of a CCG. You're doing it in phases. You have this real-time phase where you're quickly swapping cards, paying money to the bank, buying booster packs, which look like booster packs.
You're cracking packs
great.
of boosters.
They look so cool.
Yeah.
And basically assembling your deck. It's basically a real-time deck building, done in a way where you can earn points through trading and building up sets and collections. That's one half of the game that works really well and is completely different than a lot of folks expect. Then there's where you're actually playing the cards out, where you're trying to fit the meta setup of the tournament, trying to play cards that'll work there, and just accumulate the most points and do the best in that tournament.
Right.
And if you do the best there, you'll get a certain number of points for that. And those two pieces of the game mesh beautifully. This game comes with so many cards, all the cards in this box, and they have an expansion, the set rotation expansion, coming out for even more cards.
Which I kickstarted.
Set up on this one is a beast.
It is.
And there are some component questions for this, with this one, don't get me wrong. But man, oh man, is this fun. And it plays unlike anything else.
Yeah.
Really, it's a truly unique game, truly fun game, and one that I just wish I could get to the table more. Yeah. Because of the kind of experience this provides.
Well, and I actually expected a lot of people in our play group to be so on it. I mean, not just you, but I thought, as I taught this to people, I kind of undersold the game.
Yeah.
And I was just surprised how many people in our play group over at Empire Board Game Library really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
That they themselves didn't necessarily expect to enjoy. They didn't have a CCG background. And so me coming from playing a ton of Magic over the years, playing a bunch of other CCGs, playing a lot of competitive Magic, I knew this was something I was going to enjoy. I played this when it was a prototype over at the Level 99 Studios, and I was like, oh, this is really good. And when we got the production copy from Brad, I just fell in love with it the first time. I mean, it is so good. It is difficult to get to the table for some reason, and I want to correct that. 2017, I'm going to play a ton of Millennium Blades with the new expansion, because it is so good. The whole real-time element of trying to build your collection, the trading, the opening booster packs, like you said, it feels like that. I've had times where I've gone into a local shop to play in a Magic tournament, and I'm looking around for, I need these 3 cards. I'm missing these 3 cards. Anyone have these? Can I borrow? Can I trade? And so that frantic thing, because it's going to start in 20 minutes. The tournament's going to start. I got a sleeve and whatever. It kind of captures that in a nice way. And then the actual tournament play, it's fairly straightforward. You play out, 8 cards? Play out 8 cards in a certain order. The order you play them in is going to have some sort of effect. There are special abilities that are triggered. 6? I think it's 8. Yeah, well, the screen is showing this now. It's right here.
Research.
See? No, the screen shows it right here.
Oh, does it?
Yeah.
The screen that
we put in post.
Oh, hang on. I'm just going to pull up the rulebook because we live in an era without mystery.
Anyway, so that's my number 2, Millennium Blades.
Number 1.
All right, well, our shared number 1, Scythe.
Yeah.
Stonemaier Games, designed by Jamie Stegmaier. This was one, and I'm hearing this so much right now. I'm hearing people that are saying it either lived up to the hype or didn't live up to the hype.
And it got a lot of hype.
It did get a lot of hype. For me, it absolutely lived up to the hype. Now, keep in mind, I got to play this, our buddy Matt over at Empire, he put together a print and play copy during the Kickstarter. So I actually had played it while the campaign was going, and I knew I really liked it.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed the mechanics. I really enjoyed the gameplay. So it wasn't necessarily that it lived up to the hype. It's just I got a chance to play it, and I liked the finished product even better than Matt's print and play. Shocker, because the components are amazing.
Gorgeous.
The components are the gold standard of board gaming, I think. I mean...
Up there with Mechs versus Minions.
Right, right. It's just fantastic. So this is kind of a farming game with a little bit of warfare.
A farming simulator.
Farming simulator. A little bit of the threat of warfare thrown in there. Interesting action selection. You have a 2-part player board that you'll have different combinations in different games. You have individual player powers. You select an action, and there's a top action and a bottom action. Next turn, you have to select a different action. And so interesting choices there. You're moving around the board, you're gathering your resources, you're building these mechs, which give you additional rule-breaking abilities. There's a race element to it, because you're trying to not necessarily be the first to drop your 6, but your 6 stars, get your 6 objectives. But that's usually a good sign that you're going to do well.
Right.
Because then you have to worry about popularity. You have to worry about how many territories you're occupying. So many things to consider in this game. I've heard complaints that the end kind of seems abrupt.
Yeah.
But I feel like if you're kind of paying attention and realizing what everyone's capable of, you're kind of preparing for that. Very often I'm saying to myself, okay, it's going to end in 2 turns. I've got 2 turns left. Right. But there's just so many things about the game. There's a simple elegance to the action selection. Turns, when people know what they're doing, turns can be fairly quick. There's something very satisfying about being able to get both the full effect of a top and a bottom action. Yeah. And when you can do that turn after turn after turn, oh, you're in good shape. And it's really satisfying. Yeah. I love this game. I mean, it made both of our top 10 of all time lists. We redo those every year in August. So, I mean, it was a no-brainer that it was going to be on my top 10. No-brainer that it was going to be my number 1. Yeah. I mean, nothing has come close to Insignia.
No, in terms of the gaming experiences that I've had this year, some of the most memorable ones I've had have been playing this game. And I think part of that is because there are so many different ways to win this, much like Terraforming Mars. You can win without mechs. It seems crazy when you're learning the rules that you can go about this game and win and do well without mechs. I did it. You can do it. It's doable with the right faction or the right mindset. It's one that you don't necessarily go in to that, but if you're playing with the game, if you're thinking about what's best in this situation, if you're driving towards a good strategy, you're going to find a lot of interesting ways to have success in this game. with the Underminer. The different faction abilities are fascinating and how they work with the different boards and how they set up these interesting situations.
Right.
The Underminer can be kind of a late game terror, just bullying players, especially on tunnels, and winning a ton of combats and dropping stars like crazy. But they might be slower in the early game. The Nordic Kingdoms, with that swim ability, can set up nice board presence, create almost a wall of villagers that is going to be very costly to try and pierce, and take up territory that way. There are a ton of different things going on in this game in terms of how to play. For me, it clicked from game one.
Yeah.
I have yet to lose it this one still, somehow, some way. I don't know why. It's not the type of game that I would typically gravitate towards either.
Again, that's what's weird. I didn't think you were going to like this game.
Yeah.
I thought you'd be so on it.
Sure.
I didn't think you were going to hate it, like Millennium Blades.
Right.
But I thought you'd be so on it.
It sucked me in from a narrative perspective because the art in this game is absolutely stunning. The decisions on the encounter cards you have are cool.
Have you looked at the art book? Have you actually?
I've not actually looked at the art book. It's really cool. It's a stunningly gorgeous game.
Yeah.
That fits its theme well. And I love the fact that you can succeed at this one by putting farmers out there as
meat shields.
Meat shields effectively, taking up space and taking up territory. That's a legitimate way to go about this in terms of there's a positional element to this that I'm really hooked on. I like what the new expansion does with these non-island bound factions out there. I'd like to play more with that. I've played it once so far. There's a ton going on in this game, and it's a world that I just like to be in.
Sure.
It certainly doesn't click for everyone, but boy, it really clicked for me. And not just because I'm good at it, but because there's cool mechanics, gorgeous theme, and art that blends together into this perfect package. The components, everything. It's just a perfect tabletop experience, and it's high up on my top 10 of all time for that reason.
So I lost, of my first 3 games, I lost 2 of them.
Okay.
Since those, and the third one was to you.
Yep.
Since those 3 games, I've played, I think, 12 total, so 9 since.
Okay.
I've been undefeated.
Okay.
In 9 games.
Yeah.
Pretty sure. Reasonably certain. So before you leave...
Undefeated.
Before you leave, of the 9.
Okay.
The latter.
Yeah.
Anyway, we gotta play.
All right.
We need to figure out how many players we want.
Yeah. And who gets which factions?
Oh, random, right?
Yeah, okay.
I'll even let you have Ruseviets.
No, I don't need it.
Okay.
I don't need it.
Right.
I've won with every faction, Sean, except for the expansion ones, because I haven't played with them.
Okay.
Just saying.
All right.
Boy, that'll be... Yeah, okay.
All right. All right, so let's talk about crossover.
Yeah.
Right? Obviously, Side of Millennium Blades.
Yep.
Terraforming Mars.
Yep.
Great Western Trail.
Happy Salmon,
and Capital Lux.
Yeah, that's 6 of the 10.
Now, some of that is because we're playing a lot of the same games.
Right, to review for the podcast. Yep.
Right. So, I mean, I still find that interesting. There were some really solid games that came out this year. Last year I said 2015 was the year of the blockbuster because you had Conames, you had Pandemic Legacy, but I still think Terraforming Mars and Scythe, especially, are going to have a huge impact on the hobby for years to come.
Yes.
Maybe not Millennium Blades as much. I mean, I'd like it to.
Sure.
Because I think it's fantastic. I think Arkham Horror as well. For me, this was a pretty solid year.
And then Star Wars Rebellion, which neither of us have played, but we have heard a ton of good things about it.
I mean, I look at my contenders and I'm just like, wow, I really need to get on top of that. I'm curious what my list in April is going to look like, because my top 3 are in pretty good shape.
Yeah.
Like, I don't see anything moving them off by any means.
Sure.
I mean, they're going to be there, and they're going to probably be in the top half. But who knows?
Yeah.
What do you think about 2016 as a whole?
So, as I was making my lists for 2015 and 2016, I had very different experiences with those lists. Mm-hmm. And I recall with the 2015 list, it was hard, what am I going to leave off? And with this one, it was more, what am I going to put on?
Interesting.
There's some really good success at the top end of this. Scythe, Millennium Blades, Happy Salmon for me is a classic. And Terraforming Mars, I think, is the one that's going to have the broader impact of the bunch. There's some really quality games. I just think 2015 was better. I just think 2015 had in terms of the quantity of good games and the top end, it helps that Baseball Highlights 2045 is that year. It helps that Montaigna is that year. And those are, for me, all-timers. But if I'm looking at my top 10 and stacking up against this top 10, I'm liking the top 10 of 2015 a lot better than the top 10 of 2016. And that's not to say I don't think 2016 was a bad year, but I do think it didn't quite shine as bright as 2015 did. Okay. I couldn't tell you why.
All right. All right, well, that is our top 10 games of 2016. Really, top, 18 games or so with the crossover?
Oh, with the crossovers, yeah.
Yeah, something like, no, not even.
Do math. Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know.
6 and then 14, I think.
Okay, great.
Yep,
Thanks,
because
Ray.
math.
Thanks, Rayman.
You're welcome.
So,
Oh, yes, that was really hard.
so until next time, this is Sean.
And Alex. Alrighty, well, so that list already changed.
Well,
Good job, Sean.
we'll see. I don't know. I love Terraforming Mars. I love Great Western Trail. I said Terraforming Mars is probably a 6 in terms of gameplay. So we'll see come April. We'll see when we do our redo list.
Yeah, my redo list is going to be kind of weird.
Yeah.
I may not participate in that.
You may not participate.
I don't think that's going to happen because I'm going to be out of the country.
Yeah.
All right, before we move on, though, from kind of top year recaps and to the end of the episode, of course, the Guild weighed in with some of their favorite games of the year, and it's interesting to see what other people's thoughts were, especially given that our thoughts at the top of the list were so similar this year. So similar. So BJ from Board Game Gumbo, his top 3, and I kind of did top 3s for everyone provided a top 10.
Right.
I just kind of limited it.
Yeah.
Number 3, Imhotep. Number 2, New Bedford. And number 1, Scythe. So not too crazy. We're not too crazy. Sylvain Lacroix. Number 3, King Domino. Number 2, 51st State. Number 1, Terraforming Mars. Scott Sexton. Number 3, Inish. Number 2, Tyrants of the Underdark. Number 1, Mansions of Madness 2.0. Willie came with Star Wars Rebellion, number 3, number 2, Scythe, and number 1, Terraforming Mars. Chris Holm, number 3, Star Wars Rebellion, number 2, Great Western Trail, and number 1, Terraforming Mars.
Blaine Miley, number 3, Scythe, number 2, Arkham Horror LCG, number 1, Time Stories, Prophecy of Dragons specifically, and then Ian Kissel, number 3, Black Orchestra, number 2, Scythe, number 1, Star Wars Rebellion. So a lot of Terraforming Mars, a lot of Star Wars Rebellion, a lot of Scythe. So I mean, it's a lot of overlap with our list there too.
So yeah, a lot of Scythe in there. Some love for Time Stories. By the way, that Jamie Stegmaier did his top 10 of the year. Time Stories, number 1 game of the year.
Okay.
Prophecy of Dragons, we probably do need to play.
Probably.
So, but that'll probably be in several months. So Good luck with that. All right, before we wrap things up, our top 6, the rest of the top 6 names for this episode. Matthew S. came with Cattle Call. Neil Hoffman with Year in Remove. Like that one. The Name Father, Steve O'Rourke. Love is a cattle field.
Oh.
Is that how it goes?
Yeah.
Oh.
We are strong. Come on, really?
No one can... Oh yeah, I guess that's Love is Battlefield. All right, fair enough. Striker J, How the West Was 1 to 10. That was clever. That was a good
very
one.
Clever.
And Jeff Epner with Ride to the Top. So referencing riding on the trail and riding to the top of a top 10 list. But congrats to John Giblin, his first episode name. Happy New Steer.
Yeah, very nice. So we did mention that we're going to have a contest to give away Great Western Trail, and we're going to kind of do our typical contest. You can go to Twitter, you go to Facebook, there's some retweeting involved, they'll tell you there. Go and do that. So we're going to run this contest through midnight of January 13th, so that's a little less than 2 weeks when this episode drops. This is going to be available to everyone. If you are outside of the US, we'll do the first 15 in shipping.
Okay.
So any of the difference you'll have to make up.
Hey, I have another idea for contest entries.
Yes.
You
Okay.
ready?
Yep.
All right. 3 bonus entries.
3. God, you love
maybe
this.
it might be 2.
Two.
You adjust the number as you will.
Okay.
For any picture of you with a cow.
I feel like that's going to give like our Midwest listeners a little bit more of an advantage.
It could be, but you never know.
You could Photoshop it.
Don't Photoshop it.
What?
No,
you can.
It has to be a legit photo, or else Sean will disqualify you.
Or a picture of Alex's head on a cow.
Oh, jeez.
Either one. Alex's head on a cow. And
curse you, Photoshop.
Specifically, also not my head on its butt. Because I'm like, well, I'm leaving myself open.
So is that 2 entries?
Yeah, 2 entries. Or yourself with a cow, or some picture. You can send that to Sean.
It can't just be a cow. If
No,
you just send a picture of a cow, that doesn't count.
Sean, SEAN, at dukesofdice.com. You can send that there. Subject line, Great Western Trail. Yeah. So Twitter, Facebook, or 2 entries for yourself and a cow, Alex's head on a cow.
Sean's head on a cow butt.
Yeah. If you're, no. That's fine. That doesn't matter. We'll put those on the website or on the guild or something like that. So, January 13th, Midnight is the deadline, and I'll go and put that up on Twitter and Facebook and in the guild. So this kind of wraps it up, sort of, for 2016, Alex.
Oh, yeah. It's already 2017 when people are listening to this.
Even though it's the first second of the year.
The distant future. The year 2017.
So any board game New Year's resolutions, Alex?
My resolution is to not play very many board games from January 11th through April 27th.
Okay.
During my long trip.
This is going to be the year that I start tracking plays again.
Oh.
It's going to happen.
Okay.
It's been about a year and a half since I've done it regularly.
Yep,
So.
I have no resolutions whatsoever because I know I won't stick to them.
All right, well, I'm not quite sure what that says about you, Alex, but I'll just leave that one well enough alone. That's going to do it then for episode 124. Happy New Steer.
Happy New Steer to you.
Well, thank you. Until next time, this is Sean.
And Alex.
And Hail Hydra.
Thank you so much for listening to the Dukes of Dice. Today's episode was recorded in the Duchy on December 31st, 2016. Our theme music is provided by Carbohydro M from their Prime Legacy album. The Dukes of Dice are a proud member of the Dice Tower Network. For other great board gaming podcasts, check out DicetowerNetwork.com, and for all the latest in the Duchy, go to DukesofDice.com. Find us on Twitter at Dukes of Dice. Join in conversations on our Board Game Geek Guild. Find us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks to our sponsor, Tasty Minstrel Games. Check out all their awesome titles at PlayTMG.com. We'll see you back here in 1 week. Until then, game on! Hey, Sean, should I do like generic intro and outro stuff for when I'm gone?
Yeah, be like, this is episode 1.
1,
Two.
2, 5. Today the Dukes are joined by Mike Fitzgerald. And I could, what's the other? Oh, yeah. I could leave a generic date or a bunch like January 7th, 8th, and just like everything of the month. You want to do that?
No, I really don't.
Are you sure?
I'm totally sure. That sounds horrible.
I could leave. How about this one? This is one you can use. Albuquerque.
So I'm thinking of having the media guests have them read the intro and have them do their Albuquerque.
They better not screw it up.
Well,
they better not screw that up.
Yeah.
That's near and dear to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No pressure.
No pressure.
But a lot of pressure.
Oh, okay.
Albuquerque. That's how you do it.
Is it?
Yeah. Let me hear yours.
Albuquerque.
Oh, are we doing that now? Are we doing
Albuquerque?
I'm Batman.
Albuquerque. This is horrible. I'm going to hit stop now because
this episode's already too long.
People should not be listening to this. Sorry, everyone, for listening to this ridiculousness.